Hey, good morning. Paige Browning here. It's Saturday. This is Seattle Now. Today, we're bringing you the best from the KUOW Newsroom. First, a story about drug enforcement in Seattle. This year, city officials are putting a stronger emphasis on services for people arrested for public drug use. That's after drug possession arrests climbed last year. Supporters of the new approach call it a hopeful moment. But skeptics worry that the city's hotspots for drug use and disorder will continue to suffer. Amy Radel reports.
When Seattle police arrest someone at 12th and Jackson for public drug use, they may take the person to the East Precinct and release them into the care of Rihanna Dale. Dale knows what to say once the handcuffs come off.
It's not a good day today. I know it's not. Here's a cigarette. Here's a snack, friend. And, tell me what's going on. How did we get here and how can we make it better?
Dale does outreach for the city's Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, or LEAD. Stepping outside her Capitol Hill office, Dale runs into one of the clients she's working with, reusing his initials JL. He says he's grateful that his shoplifting charge was recently dismissed. Dale says he was found incompetent to stand trial. A recent success was getting him into housing.
He just got into his place in November of last year, and before that had been outside for 10 plus years.
LEAD is working to keep about 900 Seattle clients out of courts and jail, and the last city election is leaving them feeling hopeful. The program's founder, Lisa Dugard, is currently working for Mayor Katie Wilson's administration. And after public defenders found the city's drug charges were rarely resulting in treatment, the new city attorney, Erica Evans, said she'll divert cases away from prosecution whenever possible. She'll focus on treatment for those she does charge.
The last few years, having 90% of the people not getting treatment that come into this office is not accountability. So we are going to improve those numbers. That is a priority of this administration.
LEAD scaled back some outreach and police training last year due to funding cuts, but it now has an additional $2 million for a total of $16 million this year, after former Mayor Bruce Harrell championed a sales tax increase. In a recent podcast, Seattle Police Guild President Mike Solon took a dim view of the city's renewed emphasis on diversion.
There's not going to be any accountability for the offenders on the street who are consuming narcotics in front of you and your family.
LEAD says last year its clients made more than 2,000 connections with programs to address substance use, including treatment programs, medication, and Narcotics Anonymous. Former King County Sheriff Sue Rahr served as interim police chief in Seattle in 2024. She says she saw improvements to drug hotspots and urgency among cops to help people on the streets. But she says most officers were skeptical that diversion could interrupt addiction's vicious cycles.
There is a need, I believe, to take people into physical custody so that they can be stabilized long enough to exercise their personal autonomy to make a good decision.
Current Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes says he's hearing fears about street disorder increasing, but he says many types of crime are down and SPD officers have not stopped arresting people for public drug use.
What I will tell my officers and what I have told them to be very specific is that when we have probable cause and we have aggravating factors, our officers will make the arrests.
He says those factors include accosting people, refusing to leave a private business, and carrying or brandishing a weapon. When it comes to addressing hotspots for drug use like 12th and Jackson, Barnes says some solutions need more than police.
And that's what we're going to do. We're going to put together a real, I call it a whole of government approach to some of these particular areas. But more importantly, what people ask for more than anything else is consistency.
Barnes says he expects that the 165 officers hired last year will add more presence at hotspots like Little Saigon. With the additional funding, LEAD is staffing up too. Outreach coordinator Rihanna Dale says they use a dedicated phone to connect with police called the Green Light phone, and Dale expects it to be ringing pretty frequently this year. Amy Radel, KUOW News.
Next, a story about how researchers are treating ovarian cancer. It's known as the silent killer because it's almost impossible to detect until it's too late, when cancer has spread through much of a woman's abdomen over crucial organs like the stomach and liver. Women with certain genetic mutations are at extremely high risk of this deadly cancer, and for them, the key is prevention. For years, that meant removing the ovaries, infertility, and early menopause. Now, some researchers are trying a new approach, just removing the fallopian tubes. Eilish O'Neill has this story.
When Sarah Chen was 36 years old, she and her two sisters found out their mom carried a gene that would put them at extremely high risk of breast and ovarian cancer. So they needed genetic testing to see if any of them had inherited it. Chen was in the car on her way to vacation with her husband and 3 young kids when her genetic counselor called her on the phone.
Kids in the back were screaming, as usual, and she tells me about this diagnosis, and I'm like, oh, crap. That's not what I wanted to hear.
Chen had inherited the gene called BRCA2, or BRCA. That meant her chance of getting breast cancer was more than 50%, and her chance of ovarian cancer was about 25%. Chen is herself an OBGYN, and she's had patients with ovarian cancer.
Seeing young patients getting really bad end-stage cancer, dying at a really young age, leaving young children behind, I didn't want that to be me. I knew I wanted to do something to reduce my risk so that I could be here to raise my kids.
The standard of care for women like Sarah Chen with high-risk genetic mutations has always been removing their ovaries, fallopian tubes, and breasts as young as their mid-30s. But that can be devastating. It can take away the chance to have children without expensive fertility treatments and can wreak havoc on a woman's health.
You know, when we take out ovaries before the menopause, there's an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, an increased risk of osteoporosis and, fractures.
Barbara Goff is a physician who treats patients with ovarian cancer, and she's chair of UW Medicine's Obstetrics and Gynecology Department.
There's a higher risk of dementia, a higher risk of Parkinson's disease, and in general, all-cause mortality is increased when you remove ovaries before the menopause.
Goff says there's a reason removing ovaries is so bad for women's health. In natural menopause, the decline in hormones is gradual.
When you surgically take out someone's ovaries, a switch goes off. And if you do it when somebody's, say, 38, their ovaries are making huge amounts of estrogen, their body's used to it. And so to withdraw from all of that estrogen very quickly puts people into fairly severe menopause.
So doctors have been looking at how to prevent ovarian cancer in patients like Sarah Chen without all those terrible side effects. And here's the thing. What we've been calling ovarian cancer might actually start in the fallopian tubes and spread from there. Rebecca Stone is a physician at Johns Hopkins Medicine who treats and researches ovarian cancer.
Just removing the fallopian tube reduces the risk of serous ovarian cancer, the most common deadly type of ovarian cancer, by 80%.
Most of the time, women with BRCA mutations still get their ovaries removed at a young age. But at big research institutions like UW Medicine, doctors now often start by removing just the tubes. Here's Dr. Stone at Johns Hopkins again.
I like this strategy for high-risk women because at least it gets the tubes under the microscope looking to see if there's anything there already or not.
That is, doctors use a specific methodology to check the fallopian tubes for any sign of cancer. If there's anything there, they go back in and take the ovaries out, too. Dr. Stone says, for most high-risk women, this strategy could delay needing to remove their ovaries by 5 to 10 years. But unfortunately, not forever.
This is a picture actually from my OR today.
The tubes are attached to the ovaries on the outside, catching the ovaries like a mitt catching a baseball. So there could always be some bits of the tube stuck to the ovaries, and the cancer could start there.
Hello. I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
When I met Sarah Chen at her house in Bellevue, it was decorated for Christmas. She told me that when she learned about her cancer risk, she felt ready to remove her fallopian tubes right away.
I was pretty confident that having my tubes removed was a simple, easy surgery that was a no-brainer for me. I perform those surgeries myself. I know how well my patients do and recover quickly. So I was ready to sign up for that.
She got the rest of the surgeries she needed about 5 years later. What still worries her is her daughter. She doesn't know if she has the genetic mutation or not.
Is she going to be able to conceive naturally and enjoy not having to worry about fertility treatments? She's going to have her ovaries removed at an early age and potentially go through bilateral mastectomies as well, just like I went through. My heart does hurt thinking about that for her.
Doctors say it's a devastating diagnosis, but for some women, at least this new treatment can buy them another 5 to 10 years before they go through menopause. Eilish O'Neill, KUOW News.
And finally, a little primer ahead of tomorrow's consequential Seahawks game against the Los Angeles Rams. For the first time in 11 years, the Seattle Seahawks will return to the NFL's NFC Championship game. Kickoff is Sunday afternoon at 3:30 with some home field advantage at Lumen Field. 12s and fair-weather fans are feeling pretty good about the Hawks' chances after they trounced the 49ers last week. For insights on what to expect, KUOW's Kim Malcolm chatted with sports writer Jerry Brewer at The Athletic.
Jerry, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Kim.
So a few weeks ago, you told KUOW that this was the matchup everyone wanted to see, and it has now manifested itself. You are going to be there at the game. What do you think the atmosphere is going to be like walking into Lumen Field?
As crazier than it has been since the heart of the Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, Legion of Boom days. It's going to be absolutely crazy. We're talking more than a decade in the waiting for Seahawks fans, for Seattle to get back to this level.
Yeah. You wrote a piece about the team right now and how they're doing with the headline, "Yes, the Seahawks really are this good," which seems to suggest that nationally, perhaps they're not getting the attention or the respect that they deserve. You said they should be considered the clear favorites to go all the way. Why are they so good?
For a team that is 15-3 on the season, they've kind of snuck up on people, and normally that doesn't happen. We're talking about the best defense in the NFL. But people forget that the Seahawks finished third in scoring this year. In the regular season, they outscored opponents by more than 190 points, which is 11 or so points per game, which is just blowout. By NFL standards. If you compare them to the Denver Broncos, who are in the AFC Championship game, same record, number one seed as well, they were like 100 points worse in point differential than the Seahawks. This is a dominant team, but I don't think people think of them that way because Sam Darnold, who was a reclamation project, is their quarterback, and because the Seahawks haven't been at an elite level in quite some time.
Let's talk about the players a little bit. There's a lot of talent stacked here. A lot of players we could talk about, but is there anyone in particular that you think people should be keeping their eye on Sunday?
Well, the Seahawks' best player is Jackson Smith and Jigba, their wide receiver, a unanimous first-team All-Pro. He's an extraordinary player. On defense, they don't have a superstar to the level that Jackson has risen on offense. However, they have about 8 or 9 really good players, and we could go through so many names, but let's start with the defensive lineman, Leonard Williams, the big cat, just a really gentle giant, but a phenomenal player. You can go to Ernest Jones, the fourth, the middle linebacker who changed everything from this defense, a former Ram after they acquired him. You can go to Devin Witherspoon, dynamic cornerback on the back end of that defense. You can even go to a rookie, Nick Emmanuri, who is just an impossible-to-replicate player and someone who has just fundamentally changed everything they can do on defense. So, and we've just named about 3 or 4 names, but it's the entire defense. I've never seen in recent memory a defense that was as good from front to back as the Seahawks are.
Wow. And they're young as well.
They're young. The Seahawks are one of the youngest teams in the NFL. If they're able to make the Super Bowl, they'll be one of the youngest teams to make a Super Bowl. If they win it, one of the youngest teams to win the Super Bowl. It reminds you, people have to go back to 2013, 2014, 2015, that team that broke through and brought Seattle its first championship. They were similarly youthful. And what does that mean? That normally means that you're going to have a long run of success. You have to give a tremendous amount of credit to John Schneider, who was recently named the Executive of the Year in the NFL, and rightfully so for what he's put together.
Yeah. Would you say that there's anything that the Seahawks have to avoid to go all the way?
I think that the only thing that can beat Seattle is if they turn the ball over and put themselves in bad positions. And this is for Sam Darnold, who has just been a remarkable comeback story the last 2 years in the NFL, first with the Minnesota Vikings, now with the Seahawks. If there's been a kryptonite for him, it's that in big moments he's committed turnovers. And the Rams have benefited the most from Sam Darnold making mistakes both last year in the playoffs when he was with the Vikings, but then also this year in 2 games with the Seahawks against the Rams, threw 4 interceptions in a game that they lost barely to the Rams, had multiple turnovers, but came back and played really well in the comeback victory that the Seahawks had here late in the season. It's on him to manage the game. It doesn't have to do too much, just has to manage the game and keep the mistakes at a minimum. But what you don't want to do is play tight and play timid. He has to go out there and he has to let it rip. And he's someone who, he's your biggest concern, both like where his head is, and he's your biggest concern physically because he's managing an oblique injury. He looked really good last week against the Niners, but he didn't have to do much. He only had to throw 17 passes.
Right.
He's going to have to do a lot more against this team.
Yeah. Jerry, looking ahead, maybe past Sunday, at the risk of jinxing all this, what storylines are you most interested in?
I think as a longtime Seattleite, I would love to see the Seahawks and the Patriots again because we've been waiting for 11 years to get back. You know, that's the Super Bowl that the Seahawks seemingly had in blue. And there's no one on this roster who went through that. But to this city and to this organization, even though Tom Brady and Bill Belichick wouldn't be on the other side, I think it would be a huge moment of just release for the angst of Seattle sports fans to get one back over the Patriots.
Oh, yeah. I know for some 12s, it's just something they still just have a hard time talking about. It would mean a lot.
Yeah, just getting to the Super Bowl regardless. On one end, if it's the Broncos who win, it's one of your great rivals going back to when the Seahawks were in the 80s and in the AFC. But we've already seen that, 43-8, 12 years ago. What you want to see is, I guess it would be a classic redemption tale, even though there's no one specifically on the field who would feel that redemption.
Yeah. Well, the rest of us likely would. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. All eyes will be on Lumen Field come Sunday. Jerry Brewer writes for The Athletic. Jerry, thank you so much for meeting with us at this moment.
Oh, anytime. This is what sports is all about. It's fun. I just love the community aspect of this, to be able to see the city on fire in blue, but add some of that green as well because the Rams have blue in their uniforms as well.
Appreciate you listening to Seattle Now, and thanks to our generous donors for their support. You can help us out by clicking the link in the show notes, and as always, we love when you follow and rate the show right there on the podcast app. Today's interview was produced by John O'Brien, and the features were reported by Amy Radel and Eilish O'Neill. Our production team also includes Caroline Chamberlain-Gomez, Vaughn Jones, Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, Andy Hurst, and Patricia Murphy. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Paige Browning. See you soon.